The Thunder Tube is a great instrument on its own, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for with regards to the sound of the engine of the Avalon, which is the spaceship in Passengers. So instead, I took to recording multiple layers and testing out and really just experimenting with what I liked. I used things like tape delay, fiddled with the LFO amounts and the flutter amounts rather than the actual tape or delay part itself. I experimented with GRM tools such as warp and shift. Um, I also used spectral gates a couple of times, and really I just sort of worked out a way to fit in the puzzle of everything. I took the layers that I had and the various development ideas, and I played them against one another. I reversed them, inversed them, layered them up, cut them to pieces, and eventually something came of it. What you can see here is I'm just editing the levels of a wind recording in Bournemouth Beach, which I just added in to add bass and just depth to the engine noise of the Avalon. Um, Here I am taking what was just a sine wave recording earlier on, and I've slowly altered it and developed it so it's a bit less recognizable. Um, I used sine waves a lot just as a starting point, so then I could have complete free reign over layering, editing, all sorts of EQing there, adding space, then reversing those, layering them up, and having them use as gates actually alongside things like the Thunder Tube recording from earlier. I ended up creating some quite interesting computer based sounds using that technique. This is just another example of me using the sine wave as a bit of a starting point. I also used the Thunder Tube edits from earlier to bounce off one another in a way, and I experimented with the sounds that they made together while using various things like EQ and GRM tools to alter those sounds. Like I'm using Shift and Warp again, my two favorites. And really, a lot of this film clip was just me experimenting. I took bass sounds, put a load of effects on them, took those effects away, recorded, re-recorded, re-recorded again, and just saw where that took me. Sometimes nowhere, and I started again, like I kind of have here. But sometimes I could get an idea of where I wanted to take a recording, and then I would just play with it. So as you can see, I just added spectral gate, I re-recorded again, then I'm putting a bit of a sweep on the sine tone, and then I recorded that and played them off each other, and then added a gate. So really, it slowly built up over time, and it all just depended on where the experiments took me, and then I sort of floated along with them. The overall room tone in the end for the room I was working on is quite subtle because the room is meant to be quite quiet, but I really think it captures the hushed engine noises that you would expect from that room. So I'm really happy with how that went. The wind up walking children's toy was a bit of a wild card when I was in the Foley room experimenting with sounds I could make, but breaking each click down into a single element, I then got about 5 or 6 different sounding clicks, and I just layered them together and matched the text on screen, and it created a really nice typing sound, which is kind of lo fi. Continuing on from my earlier success of just layering and playing around with various different effects, I also found that those same type clicks from the wind up toy could be layered and smushed almost together. I chucked the dumpster fire plugin on there. I put in some fuzz wahs. I did all sorts of fiddling and messing around. And in the end, I got what was a pretty nice computer sound. It's quite organic sounding, but I think for some of the movements on screen of this high tech machine, I would expect those more naturally sounding effects.